Alrighty. Hey gang. Welcome back, you guys. Happy Wednesday. Another episode of Stove Chat. Episode 26. And yeah, here we are. So I'm having some lighting issues today. Hope you guys don't mind. It's just the sun is blazing in my windows and it just dropped. We just got far enough into the fall that right now it's shining kind of right on my camera. So I messed with it for a little bit trying to fix it, and we'll just have to deal with it. So hopefully it's working out okay. Actually, it's gotten a lot better just in the last like 2 minutes. I think it just dropped out of the direct line of the camera, but so that's why I got that sheet hanging up there. So bear with me here with my amateur production. So all right, how are you guys? Good to see everybody. Glad you guys are all here, man. Thanks for showing up, you guys. Really enjoying these stove chats, and really appreciate all your guys' questions and comments, and glad you guys are all here. So it looks like we got a great crew. Robin, you guys are getting in the 40s at night. Wow, that's actually, we are there too, but that surprises me. I didn't know you guys would be that cold this early. Positive aspect, glad you're here, Dan. Glad everyone's here. I don't know if I'll list all your names, but Dan, I'm really glad to see you here. Hopefully you caught up last week. We showed some of your stoves, and man, those are awesome, Dan. Those builds are just beautiful. I love that 8-inch J. So, and the gang seemed to like it too. So nice work. Oh, good, Robin. Thank you. I'm glad the lighting is working then. Yeah, I was struggling. I mean, the light was hitting the camera directly, and when I, like literally 10 minutes ago when I was trying to get it to go, it was just a big washed out white screen. It's looking a lot better now. So yeah, all right, we got a lot of stuff to cover today, you guys. I'm really stoked on all the input I've been getting from you guys, all the questions, build photos. It's so wonderful to see everyone kind of moving forward and progressing. And on that note, I've been getting a ton of emails from some of you who are customers, some of you who aren't customers, who are just building stoves and reaching out to me, which is great. I love that. And some of you who are building, some of my designs just off my videos. So you guys know who you are if we've been talking. And I just wanted to say how much I'm enjoying those communications with all you folks. So, I do, as you guys know, sell my plans through my website, and then obviously communicate with quite a few folks as you guys are building your stoves. And it's just what's been really rewarding. It's been seeing you guys all progress. It's hard. I get so many emails from people at all different levels, people who have watched no videos, people who've been watching rocket stove videos for years, people who have built, some sort of stoves, people who haven't done anything. And one of the biggest challenges for me is trying to keep those people patient with me, and me to remain patient with them, and us to communicate as we go down that path, and they start to, accrue enough knowledge and information to start to be able to see how the pieces of the puzzle fit together and how all these elements kind of can go together, and then the things start to open up in terms of what's possible with their designs. And anyways, it's just really rewarding. I'm really enjoying it, you guys. It's really nice to see so many of you making so much progress, and I can just see it in our conversations, in our stove chats here, and I think this is a big part of it. All of you folks here getting involved and just being a part of this. It's really cool. I think we're making a lot of headway. So thank you guys for all of that. So let's see. I got kind of a new setup here, so I'm kind of missing the some of the chat. So okay, there we go. I can see it over there. So Foxstatic. Oh, I just got it. I kept reading it like Foxtastic, but it's Foxstatic. Cool, man. Right on. Thanks for the email this week, Fox. I appreciated that, getting to know you a little better and hearing what you're all up to. So Foxstatic asks, can you talk about how you like to cut CFB? And yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, there's a lot of, we've talked about this a little bit, but I just want to reiterate, there's a lot of, you'll read stuff out there on the web about the dangers of CFB, and I just want to reiterate, in my opinion, it is dangerous. It holds the same danger potential as basically any of the sharp dusts that can get into your lungs and cause, whether it's mesothelioma or silicosis or, there's a whole bunch of little sharp, pointy, and organic things in your lungs, bad stuff that happens. So that's what you want to keep from happening with a CFB. So you do want to wear a mask anytime you cut it. And I'm going to say that, in my opinion, it's no more or less dangerous than cutting fire brick or even regular brick. They're full of silica, and you make that stuff airborne. Not to mention refractory powders, any of the things we use. So I just wanted to reiterate that. When you're handling or cutting CFB, wear a mask, but don't be scared. It's not, in my opinion, any more dangerous than changing your pool filters with diatomaceous earth, anything like that. You just take the appropriate precautions, but don't be fearful. So there's the first part of cutting CFB is wear your masks, but it's not a cobra or whatever. You'll be fine. Secondly, how to cut it. There's a few different things that work well, some that don't work well. One of my main goals is to try and avoid creating too much dust, to try not to turn it into dust. So I don't like using things like routers or table saws if I can avoid it. There's one power tool that I love that works. In my opinion, it's the very best thing to cut CFB, and that's an oscillating tool. And it's, the Fine was the first brand out. They made the Multi-Master, excuse me. But now there's, Makita's and Milwaukee's, and everyone else has what they call a multi-tool, and it's an oscillating tool. So the blade doesn't go like this, and it doesn't rotate. It just oscillates. And what that does is it's the same way that a cast cutter works. So it has enough vibration to cut something brittle, but it won't cut something soft, because that soft thing will move with it. And in cutting that CFB, it just works really well for just kind of working. It actually just cuts it like butter. The stuff just kind of disappears in front of it, and the dust sort of just stays right there. It doesn't make a big airborne cloud. So I really like an oscillating tool, a multi-tool. That's my preferred way of cutting CFB. I like to use like an aluminum straight edge and use a flat, like those oscillating tools. They have like floor cutoff wheels for getting under door jambs and stuff. Those work really well for cutting that CFB. If you don't have that, you can cut it a really simple way using my favorite. I don't recommend a utility knife because you'll just dull it instantly, and it's such a short little blade. It's kind of like cutting foam with a utility knife, deep foam. It's just sort of a pain in the butt. But a long-bladed, serrated knife, like if you go to the Goodwill and get yourself like a big old bread knife, or something like that, those work great. They don't need to be super sharp. It's the serration that really does it. So one of those little Victorinox fishing knives, a little red-handled, serrated 8-inch knife or 4-inch blade, whatever, something like that. Those work great. So any kind of serrated edge seems to work great. I don't care for non-serrated edges because the ceramic will just dull it instantly, and then you're just kind of pushing your way through the board. So that's my cutting tips there. The other part of it is use a straight edge. It's hard to cut that stuff straight. The blade wants to wander all over. And I think that's all I got for now on cutting CFB. So Wolf from Walmart, stoked. I'm happy you made it here too, bro. Nice to see you. So let me get caught back up in chat here. Hacksaw blade, says Belgian Gulch. That's a great one. That's actually ideal. I've never tried that Belgian Gulch, but that would be perfect. It's got all the right things. It's tempered. It's made for cutting steel, so the ceramic isn't going to just wear it down instantly. And most importantly, it's serrated, and fine serrations seem to work really well for cutting this stuff. So great input there. Thank you, my friends. So Positive Aspect says clients emailed saying they've gone from huddling next to combustion stove wearing hats and thermals to living happily and warm. That's awesome, Dan. That is so cool to hear. Your stove, man, that was so beautiful. I'd like to ask you actually, Dan, what were the backs of the big bench? Were those stone slabs that you cut? I couldn't really tell if that was like marble or stone, and actually around the top too of that stove. I wonder if that was like a marble or something. It looked really nice. So So Positive Aspect says he uses a table saw for cutting CFB, but has a serious dust extractor and wear a mask. I've already developed asthma from wood dust before I got the dust gear. Yeah, so that's a, you know what? Actually, Dan just brought up a really great point. Again, I'm just going to go back to the safety of CFB and how, I'd just like to reiterate that I don't feel like it poses any greater risk than other stuff. And one of the things I wanted to use to point that out is wood dust. And, we don't all run screaming from wood, but if you spend all day in a shop next to a table saw or a CNC machine, my friend Wolf, if you're not wearing a mask, there's going to be a time when that's going to be a real problem for you. And so I just want to kind of reiterate that dust of all kinds is a problem, so don't get scared of the CFB. You guys know I'm kind of harping on that because it's getting better. When we first started playing with CFB a few years ago, people were, rightly so, cautious. Some of that cautiousness, sort of turned into sort of an overabundance of caution, and now we just sort of have to work a little bit to correct that. So that's all I'm hoping to do is just sort of correct some of the knee-jerk reaction, just get us back in the middle of the road and say that this is a great material to use the proper precautions. So Positive Aspect answers my question regarding those stone slabs, sandstone. That's awesome, man. It looked so good. Looked really, really good. And yeah, particularly hardwood, as Positive Aspect throws in. Particularly hardwood with dust, anything really like, the teaks and the ipes and the eucalyptus, which you have there. We don't have much of that here, but ironbark, things like that. Some of those actually have those same, some of the fibers, I think it's cedar has that same characteristic. What's the word? Where it won't initiate an immune response. Like if you get a big splinter, there's some woods that won't make pus, and that's actually terrible because then there's no way for your body to move that that piece out of there. So anyways, enough about that. Yep. Wolf says lots of MDF contains formaldehyde, so wear your masks and scrub your air. Absolutely. So just on those notes, I worked for a long time in a boatyard, sanding the bottoms off of boats, cutting fiberglass, and day in and day out, just around horrible toxic stuff. And so I would spend, I spent a decade or more with a full face mask almost every day, and at first they seemed kind of onerous, and eventually we got, some of the real sensitive people, we were getting them the fresh air systems where they'd have a blower pushing air in from the outside. And this is really an aside. It's not about stoves. I just want to talk about safety a little bit, I guess. What I wanted to say was when you first start, some of those things seem like overkill, but the more time you spend in those environments, the more you realize, how important they are. And so, yeah, just an encouragement to be prudent about that safety stuff, especially if you enjoy building things and you want to do it for a long time. It sucks. I did have a friend who got sensitized to epoxy and could never work with it again. So just be careful. That has nothing to do with stoves. That was sort of an aside. So hey, let's get back to it. Got couple great questions from email. Let me catch back up with chat real quick, make sure that I'm caught up. It looks like we are. So a couple great questions with the email. And hey, Sally Mufari, nice to see you. Thanks for being here. Oh, and Pete, hello. Hi. Sorry, man, I didn't catch you slide in there. Nice to see you. I hope the pizza oven's cooking you some killers these days, bro. So let's see. Great question here from Belgian Gulch. As always, Belgian Gulch, thanks, man. Love the questions. So he's asking about his batch boxes. He's been burning them every morning now. He says they're burning great. The 6-inch is burning awesome, he says. Here's today's question. Can I make a 6-inch batch box longer? When he's burning a 7-inch, it's 20 inches depth. But the 6-inch is only 18. And with the stub of the secondary air, he says it limits his choices. And yeah, Belgian Gulch, you can make it longer. So that is the one dimension, the length of the firebox, the depth, as it were. That is the one dimension that, and this is according to Peter, according to his tests, according to his spreadsheet, that dimension can be extended. How much, I don't know. I'm sure there's a limit, so I would suggest you try and keep it reasonable. But certainly, if you stretch it out a couple inches and get yourself 20 inches or so, or in that 6-inch, you'll be fine. So highly recommend you do that. And you can absolutely do that with no, excuse me, you guys, I'm just sorry, taking care of some turning things off I didn't do before I started. You can take care of that. You can extend that batch box with no penalties to efficiency, is what I'm trying to say. So there you go. So Sally Mafari says, I am sensitized to fiberglass myself. I can't visualize a worse flavor of hell than the boatyard. Yeah, it pretty bad. And prior to that, I was out on the road as a sales rep, but I got there from working in a snowboard factory, which was also, that place, we were all kids, and it was a new industry. We were developing, we were building our own presses. I worked next to the owner-founder building a plastic recovering system that we used on the grinders. We'd grind the bottoms of the snowboards off, and we made a water capturing sieve that would capture the polyethylene so we could resinter it. Anyways, point being, we were like 20-year-old kids making a snowboard factory with no prior, there was no one to really model other than ski factories and water ski factories. And man, that factory sparkled in the afternoon, just fiberglass flying everywhere. It was horrible. So I'm probably going to pay for all that stuff if I'm not already, which might be why I only eat one ingredient. But anyways, yeah, be careful, people, please, especially if you're got a lot of years ahead of you to get to do cool stuff. Make sure you try and keep getting to do cool stuff, because cool stuff's fun. So yeah, positive aspect, I did. I was one of the first 5 guys there. Those are my boys. I was the fifth employee there in the factory. They Pete actually and Mike both have told me since then they hired me because I was bugging them. I was building a wakeboard in my garage. I was 16 or 17. We were all competitive snowboarders in the Northwest, and every time I get on a lift with one of those, I'd be like, okay, so how do you do this? Because I wanted to build my wakeboard. And they've told me since that they hired me because they thought I was going to become their competition. But yeah, I pretty much, I helped build that company. I brought the brand to the Rockies, and yeah, you'll see my tracks all over that brand. So anyways, let's move on here. So that was a great question regarding the length of the batch boxes. So another awesome observation from Belgian Gulch, and I really want to go over this because we talked about this a few weeks ago, and this is really important. So I'm not going to read all of this, but basically he's commenting about cleaning out his stove, and he had neglected to do it before he rebuilt his stove. And in doing the rebuild, he had used a lot of water. You get the whole floor wet when you build a stove, right? And that water had run down his flue pipes in his bench, and it had sort of cemented all the old ash in the flue pipes. And he was like, darn, I got to get that out of there. So he started cleaning it out and found that, the stuff coming the other way, closer to the chimney, was also wet and needed to be cleaned out. So he's trying to figure out where the water's coming from. And he's starting to, look at the goop and the gray cloud coming out the chimney. And he says, on day 3, I'm watching the gray cloud rise past the cap and out of the chimney. I thought, why not go remove the cap and let some of the steam out quicker? So he's just got a bunch of water trapped in the ash. It's just cooling down combustion, making a bunch of steam and a mess. So he goes up there and he pulls the cap off, and what does he find? Water condensating on the bottom of the flue cap. Condensating on the flue cap, dripping back down the pipe. So, a few weeks ago, Rich Points asked about the steam in the beginning of the burn coming out of the system, and I talked about how, in the morning, you're just kind of pushing the water through the system, right? You're gonna evaporate it here, but it's gonna hit the cold system here and condense. And eventually this part's gonna get warm and this part's gonna evaporate back into the flue stream. But it's gonna hit this cold part of the stove and it's gonna condense again. It's gonna turn back into liquid. And that is going to continue as this flue path warms up, right? So warms up, and now it's in the chimney. Same thing. Condensing, turning into moisture, dripping back down, cooling it back down. The heat comes back up, heats it up, and it's eventually the heat is ideally going to take over and win, and that heat is going to heat the whole chimney up to the point where condensation point to where you're going to blow your steam out of the chimney and not recondense. Now, problem is if the air is really cold, your chimney cap stays cold, you'll always get that condensation coming back in. So this is one of the main reasons why insulated flue pipes are so useful and such a great recommendation. More than anything, it's because they maintain stack temp all the way to the top, and they give you a much better chance of blowing your moisture out of the chimney rather than just having it recondense and getting what a stack cycle in there, a stack rain cloud. So really, really important component. Once you are deep in the winter, Belgian Gulch, although the air is so cold, you also will probably eventually be burning so often that your temps will warm up, and your chimney, your exhaust will hopefully be leaving at a much higher temp, and that will cease to become an issue. For most of us, we have chimney caps, and for most of us that isn't usually a major issue. There usually is a time in the beginning of the season, in the beginning of a burn, when you're getting that condensation, but it's not often that it's continual. So this is just a tuning thing. It's just something that you need to be aware of. It's probably not going to be a problem. You probably don't need to worry about it until it is. You can tell when it is, because usually you'll see big black drips running out of your chimney pipe. And if that chimney pipe comes straight inside your house, you'll see it in your house. Wherever there's an elbow or wherever, you'll get that water coming back in. And eventually, if you're not overcoming that situation, you'll eventually have more water, in the house than is leaving, and it's an obvious problem. If you overcome it, then you're just going to eventually dry things out. So Sally Mafari says, is there a flue cap design that can allow for that vapor to escape rather than drop back in? There is, Sally Mafari. That's a great question. So it's really, any cap that is kind of like, flat, that's just going to condense on the ceiling and sort of drip back randomly in. Even peaked, often they can sort of condense in the peak and rain out at the peak. But if you use one of those sort of directional that has like a shed, just a sloped roof, then it's more likely, since there's not a high spot to catch it, so if it's hot enough it can just get out before it gets cooled, and if it does condense, it's going to run down and off outside of the flue pipe. Like I said, for most people that isn't going to be a major concern. Frankly, if you're having that problem, you probably have a lot of condensation just down below that cap too, because unless you're riding that line on that range, you're probably making condensation. So keep in mind there's a whole host of factors going on. The humidity outside, the temperature outside, the temperature inside, humidity inside, pressure, humidity, wood, temperature, your stove. So there's a whole lot of factors, and it is early in the season. So like for Belgian Gulch, I think it's probably too early for him to be overly. He doesn't sound concerned. He's got a great attitude. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it. He did put a whole lot of water in there, so he's got a whole lot of water to move out. So, and every piece of water, all the water you move out is just, that's cooling, right? It's cooling power that you're storing in your stove when you're storing water in there. So the more water you have in there, you've got this big cooling power basically to cool your chimney for a while until you dry it out. So there's that. So that's a great part of that conversation regarding moisture in the flues and moisture in the stoves. One thing about these things, there's always moisture. We talked about that already. It's a byproduct of combustion. And as Belgian Gulch says, it will dry out eventually. And I love it. That's my attitude as well. And if it doesn't, you'll deal with it. Then you'll know that you need to do something. But in the meantime, burn it hot and see how it goes. So there's that, right? All right. So let's move on. I got another great question here from Tall Shadow. And this is one that really is just sort of a reiteration. I'm going to grab a teaching aid here, you guys. Pardon me for 1 minute. I know I have what I need right here. When a guy's got fire bricks at the ready, he's a stove builder. So, this question is just sort of reiterating what we covered a few weeks ago. And Tall Shadow, here's what I'm going to tell you one more time. If you build a firebox like this, you know, how much wood can you put in there? How many times can you knock this before it falls apart? Not much. So this is not a construction method, okay? This is a liner. This is a flue line, or a stove liner. This will not stand up on its own in any configuration. So I always want to see, if you're building like a core like that, which I do, you know, my core, my fire brick split core uses that type of orientation, but it's always backed by something. And in the middle of that core, where there is a center piece, I use full bricks. I never would use splits like that. So Tall Shadow, gotta have support, and I don't think it's gonna work with just super wool behind it. You're gonna have to like pack that into like clay perlite slip, so, or clay perlite mortar, so the clay perlite mortar is the backing, and those bricks are actually like stuck in there. Because if they're not stuck in there, you're just gonna bang it with firewood, and they're gonna fall into your firebox. So with your wool behind there, they're just gonna bang right out there. The middle section's gonna blow apart. That other side section is gonna blow apart. So great question, but I just want to reiterate: this is not a construction method. This is not self-supporting. Okay, this is a liner. This should never be counted on to be a structure, a structure like this. So there's that. And then another question that he asked was, he has red bricks with holes, which we often get when we go salvaging, right? Because a lot of those construction bricks will be have holes through the cores. And so we've talked about whether or not those are okay to use, which they are, but you just need to fill them with mortar. But can they be used on their side? And the answer is the same. They sure can. That's no problem. Stability's fine that way. They're still pretty stable, although you're going to have a really thin skin. Okay? I mean, we got 2.5 inches and we got 4 inches, right? Depending on your bricks. There's variance there, 2.25, 4.25, whatever. But you're almost half as thin going this way. So, you know, it's gonna get really, really hot, and you might have some issues because of that. So, and that's gonna bring me back to another point, which is double skin, single skin. You know, my stoves are all single skin, and that's, you know, for a variety of reasons. But keep in mind that they're single skin with bricks laid the proper way for, you know, the way they're structurally designed to be built. That gives them quite a bit of thickness this way. Now, when most people build double skins, they're usually putting bricks as soldiers or you know, on their edge. Soldiers or shiners, as it were. And what that does is that, you know, reduces thickness by, it could be as much as half. So if you're doubling that skin, it's really not that much different than my single skins of bricks this way. So keep that in mind. Now, thickness does determine surface temperature. Overall thickness of your masonry wall determines the surface temperature of your outside surface, depending on your inside. So the delta, the difference in temperature between the inside and the outside, is going to be greater the thicker that is. So your skin will be hotter on a thinner skinned single skin stove. And that's really important for how the heat transfers into the space, because the delta T between the surface of that radiating surface on the outside of the stove radiating into the air into your space is completely dependent upon the difference in temperature. You know, you can have 80-degree bricks and 70-degree air, and you won't get heat transfer out of that. But if you have 200-degree bricks and 70-degree air, you get a lot of heat transfer into that air. And that is a super, super important factor when we're talking about masonry heaters, because it's, you know, I live in a house that has very poor insulation. I need that heater to give out a lot of, you know, radiant and convective heat. And so that's a big part of why single skins are important. And it's a big part of why, when I'm talking to you, Tall Shadow, with regards to your question, I want you to consider your burn style, your burn cycles, and all of those things. If you put those bricks on edge, I suspect it'll be a great stove for short burn cycles. It won't have anywhere near the thermal storage. It'll have about half as much because they're half as thick. So you'll use half as much mass. So you won't get a very long heating cycle out of it. But on the flip side, one fire will probably put quite a bit of heat into the space. Downside, multiple fires all day long, that thing's going to be, I mean, you might get to the point where the bricks start to fail. I'm not sure, but I just would be careful. I haven't built one like that, so I don't know. So let me catch back up with chat here. And so Tall Shadow says, gotcha on the support, so I assume that also applies to the red clay bricks on their sides. To some extent. I mean, there's a big difference. Well, there's exactly twice the difference. These just won't stand like this, right? At 1.25 inches or whatever they are. But red clay bricks at 2.5 inches, it's getting better. They can be built like that. And actually, like I just said, all of the double skin stoves you see, they often use fire bricks, shiners or soldiers on their edges. And they're fine. So it's really just a function of, the base that you're working with. And in those split bricks, there just isn't enough. And it might be fine in a place where no one was going to touch them. It's like a Jenga pile. But if you're inside the core, it's going to be hit by firewood. And you never give enough credit to how much you're going to bash the wood in there until you use it. And this is me who says I'm always careful with my CFB. And I am. And it does hold up. But that's not to say that I don't sometimes go, ooh, and the wood jams off of this piece and goes against that one, and you didn't notice the pinch was too small, and now it's digging into the side, and that just is going to happen. So you just need to have that supported. So Tall Shadow, I appreciate you saying that I was patient there. I hope I didn't come off too impatient there. I do tend to repeat the answers a lot, and I do try to be patient. I appreciate you saying that, but I feel like it's something I could work on, to be honest. My patience is something that I'm constantly challenged by. So, but thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that. I do try to be patient. It's definitely in my mind. To be honest with you guys, I got to tell you, you guys never test my patience. That's the truth. I do, get a lot of emails, and there are some that test my patience, but I haven't ever seen anyone here who's been a patience tester. It usually comes from folks who aren't really as invested as you guys are. So I really appreciate all of your questions. Keep them coming. Don't worry about the patience. So Sally Mafari says, Tall Shadow, the idea of holes in the brick creates a pressure difference between the red clay and the mortar. Thermal cycling of that leads to cracking, just like checks in cordwood. Man, Sally Mafari, frick, dude, that right there is one heck of an awesome insight. And I had never made that connection, but you're exactly right. So, big part of the mechanical fastening of all of our masonry components, and it's really crucial to keep in your mind, is the thermal cycling in all of our materials leads to shape change. And when those shape changes are dramatically different, we run into problems, right? So one of the most important things when we're talking about these brick cores, and I said one of my favorite things, what I'd like to see is if you have red brick behind this as support and there's a gap between those, I'd like to see you fill that with mortar. And the reason for that is because the mortar is going to sort of wrap around these edges of these bricks, and that shape change that we're talking about and the adhesion is actually going to just give this thing a little bit of lock-in. It's going to keep it from falling into your firebox. That's why I like to see mortar behind it rather than just some dry ceramic fiber board or something. The mortar gives you that more adhesion. Now going back to what Sally Mafari says, when we talk about red bricks with holes in them, it's exactly why when they build with those bricks in non-thermally challenged construction, that difference in expansion and contraction helps lock those things together as they set. They set with the different expansion rates, and they just lock themselves together. The mortar creeps into the voids in the bricks, and everything locks together. It's exactly what we want to see, like with the firebox. But when you're in a thermally challenged situation, you're going to get different rates. And in the case of your red bricks, when you have those thin walls around those holes, that could certainly lead to more cracking than you might otherwise see. Now, it might not be a big deal. They'd probably mostly be cosmetic cracks, given the nature of the way it would be built with mortar all through it. So I don't know that I'd necessarily like say it's a deal breaker. Again, man, I keep throwing you to the wolves, Tall Shadow. I keep just saying, well, you should just try it out, because I haven't, and mostly I'm speculating. I'm saying I build mine a certain way, but it's based on a premise. It isn't based on me having built one with holes, holy bricks sideways. I don't know how it would go. I speculate it probably would have some potential issues, might get really hot. That's probably the biggest one. So positive aspect adds double skin with our bricks, 4 1/4. Barely gets hot, warm but never hot. And built that last stove with the wall side double brick. Yeah, positive aspect saw that you had that double layer of cinder blocks to the wall. And actually, I don't know if you saw it, but I know I commented on it. I thought that was really, really brilliant, actually, to give you, safer surface temperatures in the areas where you need clearance to combustible ratings. Also hiding more mass within the build. There was a whole lot of reasons. I just thought that was super cool, man. Your whole builds, you just have a great handle on all of the aspects. And I mean, I keep talking about it, but just like in Tall or Belgian Gulch's build, it's so nice to see this sort of modular system that I'm not going to take credit for it. I think it's just all of us moving these rocket stove constructions forward. We started from masonry stoves, which were these big, labyrinths with elaborate plan puzzle pieces fit together, and we're getting to the point where we're just having these boxes and these elements that just kind of fit together. It's really cool. And Dan, you just have a great positive aspect. You have a great handle on it. And what's really neat to see, what's really rewarding for me, is to see, how that modular system, the cool things it can build. So, one of my when I first started to grasp this modular aspect way back in like 2013, was that proposal I made for my wood stove decathlon MIT competition. And that first Walker metal stove, I had the idea of, the metal components, the metal core in a metal, or the masonry core, in a metal skin. So you have a fiberboard core and a metal skin, a metal bell for a radiator if you choose a radiator, but the whole thing being designed to plug into metal bells and or brick bells and seating and tall, and that was a pretty clunky rendition of it, because it was difficult to manifest that in steel and stuff like that, but we're really, I don't know, it's like 10 years later now, just about 8 years later, 5 years later, whatever it is, we're getting this build system down. It's really cool to see. Positive aspect. Your build was a great example. I just saw all those familiar pieces put together in a really cool new way. So there you go. So great question here. Positive aspect says, how low can you go with a bench to still be effective? I'd like to add a super thick bench top, like 4 inches, but not go much higher than a standard sofa height, 15 inches, or is this counterproductive? Man, that's a really good question, and this is one that everyone who hasn't done a build yet, I really want you to pay attention here, because if you are trying to build a bench, what you're going to find is that elevation is the biggest challenge, and the reason for that is because I'm super challenged, right? Because I'm vertically challenged. I'm a short guy, and so for me, sitting height is really important. Most chair design standard height is roughly 18 inches. There's a variance there, but roughly 18 inches. Probably changes country to country, to be honest. But at least here in this Western culture, roughly 18-inch seating height. Now that's with your cushion or whatever. Frankly, that's almost too tall for me. My feet don't really fit flat on the floor at 18 inches. So this represents a pretty big challenge when you're talking about any of our stove cores. Even a 6-inch J is going to have like a 12-inch build height. It needs insulation below it if you're building on a built floor. So you've already raised it up for, we're at 16 inches at the top of the core before we've even put a riser on, before we've done anything. So it's tough. It can be tough to try to stay under that height. You got 4 inches of thickness, like Positive Aspect says he wants to use for the stone tops. And now we've got, how much do we got left to stay below? And maybe you want to put cushions on top of those. So you've added another 2 to 4 inches. You don't have much room down there. Not to mention, we're trying to hit a 6-inch flue, so we can't really pinch that too much, and it gets difficult to drive exhaust gases down far below the core if we want them to go back up again at the end of a flue run. So there's a whole lot of challenges there. So the question is, how low can you go? And that I don't think there's an absolute. I think it's going to depend on the system. But the biggest factor, I would say, Positive Aspect, is how hard can you draw? Like, if you can pull the cold gases out of that low area, then you can go as low as you want. It could be, you could have a core up 100 feet and a bench, way down there, and as long as you have the draft to pull it back out, you'll get it. But that's going to be the challenge. You've got the core. As soon as you're descending, you need to be shedding heat to descend, right? So the farther you go down, the more heat you shed. How much heat you shed depends on the volume of the internal space, how much is getting bled off. There's a whole lot going on here. Now you're down low. You're moving across your down low area. Again, you're shedding heat. You're just getting cooler and cooler, more dense. And then you're going to try and pull it up. And how far up you go is how much power you need in that chimney to pull it. Every foot matters. So that's the big deal about low elevation. So the answer is a bypass, right? Or a preheated chimney, and you can go as low as you want. So there is no hard and fast answer. And it's the same answer as really with any stove with the tuning issues. How big can my bell be? How long can my bench be? These are all the same question. They're all, how much heat can I extract from the exhaust and still get outside and maintain enough draft to keep combustion going. So that's the thing. And so, yeah, well, how low can you go? I don't know. Are you going to go right out of the riser down into the bench? You can go pretty low. Are you going to insulate on your way down there? You can really go low. You're going to save a lot of heat on your way in there. You can shed it all down there. Are you going to have a bunch of stuff before the bench, and then you're going to hit the bench and try and get out with just a little bit of trickle of power left in the flue gases? That's going to be a challenge. So maybe you have to put more energy into the flue gases with a bypass to pull it back up out of that bench. So hopefully that makes sense. Hey bud. So hopefully that answers your question, my friend. So let me catch back up with the chat. I missed quite a bit. So Sally Mafari is asking about the drop cloth. Yes, Sally Mafari, I had big issues with we're getting into fall now, and the sun was, right when I turned on the camera, the sun was blasting right into it. So I just hung up that sheet to try and keep the image somewhat workable. Yeah, it won't be there next time, hopefully. I'll probably be raining. So let's see. I don't know what I missed there. Let's see. Here's a guide on standard seating dimensions, everything from office chairs to sofas. Last bit sounds like a J-tube in plumbing. Very tough fight there to draft well. Yeah, exactly. There's plumbing going on entirely in there, Sally Mafari. While Asis says, does anyone make charcoal in their batch box? Do you think that a stainless steel log retort filled with sticks alongside normal wood would work in a batch box? Well, while Asis, I think that you've got conflicting goals there, and I don't think that's necessarily the best idea. I think you could do it if you did a retort that was sort of like isolated from the batch box. You could use the heat from the batch box to gasify the wood that was maybe in a separate chamber, and then just sort of contain all that, feed the gases into the burn area. But I think anywhere within a normal batch box, the goal of a batch box is to get so hot that we combust everything completely. And the goal of a retort is to do kind of the same thing but in a low oxygen environment, and retain, that fuel in the charcoal, due to the fact that it didn't get combusted off in the high temps. I've seen people do some sorts of combinations, but I just feel like you're really at odds. Like if you're making charcoal, then your batch box isn't burning super efficiently, you might as well just have a wood stove. And if your batch box is burning super efficiently, then your charcoal production needs to be separate, and you probably are wasting energy using that, and there's difficulty with regaining that energy, trying to reburn those gases if you're trying to deliver them, at a secondary point in your other system, because now you've got air-fuel mixture issues. It's just complicated. It's not to say it can't be done. It might be a fun project, but if your end goal is charcoal and a good heater, it's probably not a great way forward. If your end goal is a fun, thought experiment and a fun project, then it'd probably be pretty cool. I mean, people do things like that all the time. We see it a lot, actually. So it is possible. But yeah, the methods of making charcoal are very primitive and involve extreme air control through the burn phase. That's exactly it. It's like you just, most of it's like getting a big old fire and burying it, right? You're just trying to like get it to the point where it's hot enough to combust and then choke all of the air off. And that's, it's just not really compatible with rocket stove. That you'd have to have two separate sort of chambers. And then, like I said, you're sort of going to be trying to deal with your wood gas in your rocket stove, and you're just changing the nature of everything. So you can do it, yeah. But yeah, it does. I'm glad to hear that makes sense to you, because I think that when you think it through, it's really cool stuff. I mean, it's fun to combine all these things. Don't get me wrong. It's kind of how I got into it, and I definitely encourage, don't just throw that idea out there, out the window, but do understand, what are you trying to achieve, right? Like I said, if it's just fun engineering, get after it. But if really, and I said this all the time, I think we talk about this many times when, new folks come in and they ask about their building. Like, I have this dream of it doing all of this stuff. And I'm like, it's a common advice in so many things in life is, do you want do you want something that does three things poorly, or do you just want to get the one thing that does, the thing you really need it to do? So I would just encourage you to stick with that thought process whenever you're looking at this design stuff. Okay, so let's see. I do have, sorry, I gotta mess with my layout a little bit. Things are getting changed around here. Yeah, 50 minutes. I think if there's any more questions, we'll take more questions. But I think that that's probably enough for today. I still have a couple other builds that I want to get to photos of, but I want to spend some time with them. So I don't want to just kind of blast through them in these last 10 minutes, and I don't want to go terribly long, because I do know that we get a lot of people coming in afterwards, and I hate to leave them a 2-hour homework assignment. So I think that unless you guys have more questions, maybe we'll just kind of wind down here. Did I have something else to talk about? I was going to make myself some notes, and I forgot to. But yeah, Belgian Gulch, I'm glad to hear the stream's working good today. I've been getting my tech better with this. I've just got my cell phone SIM card that I use just for this streaming, and I've been unplugging that modem and then rebooting it right before I start the stream. And I think that's the big thing is it's a finicky modem, so I just have to I have to do a subnet mask reboot or something, some kind of technical modem jargon. But anyways, I know, Robin, it did go fast. I can't believe we did 50 minutes already, but I just looked at the time and we're at 51:30. It flew by. I don't feel like I covered anything. But there you go. Hey, Levin, I'm not sure if I said your name right, but welcome. Thanks for being here. Really stoked to see you. You're building one of my stoves right now, he says. That's awesome. Wonderful. And you're excited to see how it comes out. I am too. So one of my favorite things, you guys, is seeing you guys building my stoves. You know, see my sort of the kernel of my idea come to life in your hands in the new ways, like I talked about earlier, the modules, you know, because everyone has these awesome ideas, the different materials and the different cultures, especially from all over parts of the world. So Laban, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. I apologize if I'm not. It's not a name that I'm familiar with, but he's writing to just says, I'm just writing to say thanks, and I just want to say, man, you're so welcome, and thank you for building it. Please, you know, send photos if you can. Email me if you feel like you want to or need to. You don't have to, but I love seeing pictures of the stoves. I love seeing the builds. I'd be happy to share it here with the other folks on Stove Chat, and I love, like I was saying, just seeing how they manifest in different people's hands. You know, it's so cool. And my biggest excitement is that you guys are all gonna get to see how well they work, and we're gonna start a revolution. Because I think we can change the world and make things better for a lot of people. You know, wood heat is still really relevant to a lot of people, even in this modern world. So, yeah, you guys make me feel good, man. Thanks so much for being a part of this, and yeah, really appreciate it. So, all right, you guys. Well, with that says, yeah, Loven, send me some photos. Thanks for stopping in, and thanks for saying thanks. And all the rest of you, thank you so much. All your support, all your questions, all your comments. I can't tell you how much it means to me. As you guys know, my plans. I'm just going to do a little ad right here because one of you, Augustus, said I should do this more often. So if you don't know, I do have plans for sale on my site, and this is, a part of it, us getting together, talking about these stoves that y'all are building. And so I just wanted to reiterate that that this is something that I really appreciate all of your guys' support, and it's a growing thing. And so I give a lot of the credit to you guys. If you aren't familiar with them, go check out my site, walkerstoves.com. Check out the plans. It's really fun building stoves together, and we'll do it here every week. So, all right, you guys. Enough of my little sales pitch. And once again, thank you guys. I've said that 20 times. So that's it for the day. I'll be back with you guys next week. Please do send me questions. We're getting into burning season, so hopefully you guys are going to be starting up your fires and starting to be thinking about stuff we can talk about. And keep those photos coming. Keep your builds going. And let's keep moving forward. All right, you guys. I'm going to click the outgoing video. I'm going to try and only say thank you one more time. So, all right. Thanks, you guys. See you next week.